Hi, and welcome to the Breakthrough Emotional Eating podcast. My name is Kristen Jones, and thank you so much for joining me this week. So, sometimes, actually, a lot of the time, podcasts where I have guests on are so much more popular than the ones with me. And I personally love having people come onto the podcast, especially friends and colleagues of mine that know an area that I do not know, an area of expertise. And so today we have an expert in the area of, among other things, she has many, many areas of expertise, but this is one area of expertise, is we are going to have Cathy Perez, who is a very dear friend of mine. She is also a coach and a yogi. She is a yoga instructor as well. And she is also what I would consider an expert in the area of anxiety and anxiety with women and just teaching. She coaches and teaches women how to manage anxiety in their lives and how to kind of quell anxiety so you can function at a higher level than possibly what you're doing with your anxiety is particularly troublesome. And so I have to backtrack though, because I have to backtrack to how Cathy and I met. So Cathy and I met so almost 4 years ago. In May, it will be 4 years. We met in the Philippines. We were on a Habitat for Humanity trip, and with my former business coach and Cathy's former mentor. She worked with Dave as well, Dave Smith. He's from Canada, and we did a Habitat for Humanity trip with the Canadian version of that organization, and we ended up in the Philippines. And life-changing trip. It was amazing. It was an amazing trip. And Cathy and I were roommates. And we both have these crazy, like sleep patterns and workout schedules. And so we were up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to work out before we went and worked all day, building houses. So yeah, kind of crazy. But that was, I had to have somebody who was as nuts as I was. So oops, hold on a second. Hold on a minute.
What I would add is that's why I call her Roomie. That's why I call her Roomie.
Yeah, if you ever hear her call me Roomie, that's why. So anyway, that's how we met. And then we've worked together in various iterations, whether it's in a coaching situation or in just in a mastermind. And so we've done all sorts of things together. And now she helps out in my group, but she still does run her own business. And so today she is going to be kind of our expert in the area of anxiety. One thing, little known, I actually don't think it's a little known fact about Cathy. I don't think anybody in the group would know this. And this is something really interesting. And people in the chat, because we are live in the Breakthrough Emotional Eating community on Facebook, and I record this live in the group. One thing about Cathy, and I think I'm going to remember the number. I think it's 349. Is that correct?
No, but I know where you're going at.
149.
159.
159. Okay. So Cathy is the 159th certified KonMari consultant. So Cathy was trained by Marie Kondo and in the whole KonMari, organizational thing. So that was when she told me that. When I first met her, that was one of the things she told me, and I was like, "What? Are you kidding?" I didn't even know such a thing existed, but I knew who Marie Kondo was because that was like at the height of her popularity. So if you have organizational questions, but Cathy, just briefly, organization and anxiety, or lack of organization and anxiety, those two things go hand in hand, correct?
Absolutely, they totally do.
So would you say that when you are helping someone with an organizational thing, that it's actually based in anxiety, that the anxiety, which comes first?
The anxiety.
The anxiety comes first, and then the lack of organization, because then is there procrastination and then avoidance and that sort of thing. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
So she's your girl. So if your anxiety comes from that, or if you have your anxiety and then that it causes you not to perform in any aspect of your life that isn't something that you want, she's your girl right here. So that's what we're gonna talk about. So if you are live in the group and you have a question, question, any kind of question at all, pop it in the comments and I'll go through, but I definitely have some things that that Cathy's gonna talk about. And then we'll open it up to just questions. So please, if you have a question, please go ahead and put it in the comments. So Cathy, first off, just introduce yourself to everybody, tell everybody where you're from and just how this area of expertise, how you develop this area of expertise in your life.
Gotcha. And Rumi, I love you very much. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. Namaste,
Absolutely.
fellow yogi, yogini. So I was so proud of Christy. I can't believe she's been a group instructor in fitness since age 18, right?
Age 18.
And she had never gotten certified in yoga. I'm like, what the heck? But you're a master in Pilates, which I love. But it's just funny. I'm like, it took you this long to
I know. I didn't, and I never thought I would. I never thought I would get a yoga certification ever. And I actually prefer teaching yoga now more than fitness. I shouldn't say that, but I do. It's true. I really love yoga. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I love to hear that. So yes, everyone, Miss Kristen is probably even better than me at the yoga. She's been doing this a lot longer than I have, but definitely I did it for my own personal reasons, but it also obviously helped me and my coaching any clients, so to speak. But yeah, so Cathy Perez, and I am a desert blossom. So I was born and raised in sunny Arizona, and we get average 300 days of sunshine, right? So being in the Philippines was not necessarily hard for me, but it was the humidity that did me in. Like I had never drank electrolytes before, ever. I mean, I had put them in smoothies and stuff like that, but never like literally just my water. Had I not done that, I would have literally probably passed out every single day. So I'm a desert blossom, and I kindly say that I defected to California for 9 years, but then I moved back to Arizona. And all my life, actually, I've dealt with anxiety, and I just didn't know what the word was. Like, there was no word for it. And that's okay, right? I mean, you go through life. Then in 2001, I actually sent myself to the ER twice within 2 weeks of each other about. And that was when I realized I had an issue and it had come to its ugly head. And so then I was diagnosed, went to my PCP, and then she right away wanted to give me medicine. I'm like, no, she then said, okay, well, maybe you want to see a therapist. I'm like, absolutely. So anyone who's been to therapy, go for it. I totally.
If you've seen a therapist, if you are comfortable saying you've seen a therapist, just put therapist or therapy in the comments.
Please do.
Three.
Yeah.
I've done it 3 different times.
I've actually gone twice, but the first time I love my therapist and they're wonderful. And it took about that first time, it was 2.5 years. I thought I was going to get through this, and we thought, oh yeah, she's doing really good. I was doing really well for 6 months. I stopped going, and the therapist felt good about it. And then wouldn't you know it, half a year later, things got rough again. And so we started again, but it didn't feel like a failure, so to speak. But what I'm getting at is that I didn't tell anybody what was going on for 2.5 years. And so that was huge for me to finally admit, not only to myself, but to everyone else, hey, this is happening. And so you move on. And then in 2012, I had what I thought would have been likely my last anxiety episode. And from that day on, I told myself, I'm going to do everything I can to put myself in a better position because of this. Like, I wasn't going to let anxiety take me down. And so that started this, and I've always been into health and wellness. I just never took any leadership role in it, unfortunately, until our wonderful mentor, I stole all of his confidence in me and finally decided I have found a path that has helped me with my own anxiety, how to work better with it, because anxiety is not going anywhere, ladies, as Kristen has probably told you. It's part of our fight or flight system. So it's part of our natural fear mechanism, and it keeps us alive. The problem is that, unfortunately, because of our lifestyle, we then, and there is some chemical things going on, right? But ultimately, your lifestyle plays into how you're going to maneuver around anxiety. So that's how I got here. And I was even a client of my wonderful mentor, Miss Kristen. So I was in 2019, after we had met, I went ahead and had the opportunity to work with Kristen. So I was very grateful for that. And she taught, and I still use some of the different tips that you have given me, and I still use them to this day. Yeah. So that's how I got here. And back in 2017, I had already started to really think about delving more into health and wellness, even though I was always either working part-time or I might have had a full-time job at that point. But since 2008, I also was, and I'm happy to say it, a legal shield independent associate. So that catapults me into wanting to go into entrepreneurship, like start stepping away from a full-time gig. And so within all of that, again, I was dealing with anxiety, but it was because of what happened between, like I said, 2012 up until like now, that I decided to really hone in on and like how to help myself, and naturally. That's kind of where I think I settle in differently, is that I'm all for Western medicine, but I was adverse to medicine. Like medicine and me don't agree. So I knew right away in 2001, I can't deal with this on just a prescription. I'm going to have to find other ways, other means. And it meant me digging into what I love the most, which is natural, like Mother Nature, right? Mother Nature knows best. So that's how I got here, and that's where I am now. And I just happy to be alive.
Cool. Yeah. So how, oh my gosh, my eyes have gone totally blank here. So how can so tell me in just kind of, if you can explain what the connection is between anxiety and emotional eating, and how those two things, how those two worlds kind of intertwine, and what, like, just kind of, if you can explain like what, like, is there always anxiety associated with emotional eating? So just kind of your viewpoint on that.
So and wonderful question, by the way. So anxiety pops up, right? It's triggered by different things. And sometimes we know why, and sometimes we don't, meaning like it might have been something in childhood that we don't remember the memory, but that memory is in our subconscious. And so that's going to bring up a trigger sometime, unfortunately, when you're thinking about food. You're like, well, every time I see this type of food, I want to eat a ton of it. And then I wonder why I'm feeling sick later on, right? So anxiety has triggers. And unless you kind of understand where the triggers come from, it's kind of hard to understand where the anxiety is even coming from, right? But let's say that you are aware now because you're in Kristen's group and you're aware now of your thoughts, which is a lot of where this is coming from, right? So when you feel anxiety coming on, and let's say it's because maybe you're ruminating about food for whatever reason, again, I see your all comments and posts, and there's a lot of just circling back about what did I eat? Why didn't I eat this? How did I eat that? So your stress goes up and you're not even aware of it because all you're doing is going back and forth. I think what happens is that our brain is trying to keep us safe, but yet it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't know, it remembers that subconscious thought, but on a reality level, right, when you're thinking about it, you don't know why. So it's kind of hard to explain like everyone's trigger, but there is a trigger, and then anxiety pops up, and then you're like, okay, what do I do now? Well, let me eat this piece of pie because it made me feel good last time, right? So there's different reasons, and it's hard to pinpoint, but definitely you want to be more aware of your thoughts, which is what you learn when you're hearing Kristen. And from there, you can decide, okay, how am I going to deal with this? Because it's going to pop up again. Every time I see food, I'm going to feel this way. So do you want me to get into like one way to?
Well, we'll hold off on giving too much away, because you guys will get all sorts of strategies. But how, so read this here. So how can someone stop the ruminating? So you were talking about the ruminating. The ruminating is essentially those repeating thoughts. How can you stop those repeating thoughts about food that then creates that then kind of leads to the emotional eating?
Definitely. Well, there's definitely a way, and Kristen actually does a wonderful job of it as part of her programming, but it's something I've also learned too. And it's a simple concept, but it takes practice.
Mhm.
And it's your infamous that everyone knows really well if you've been with Kristen for any amount of time. It's deciding in advance, or DIA,
Mhm.
decide in advance. And again, Kristen teaches this over and over again, and it's so important because what I was talking about earlier, not so eloquently, but there are triggers, and we don't even know why sometimes. Like literally, you might be standing there at work, and then someone comes up to you and asks you a question, and you're oblivious as to all of a sudden why you're salivating thinking about the pie in the break room, right?
Mhm.
Well, it's because something in your head has gotten, your brain is on alert now. So deciding in advance, depending on, and it doesn't matter what scenario it is, okay? When you decide in advance, when you tell yourself every day, I'm going to show up in a certain way. And it doesn't matter the situation, because the situation is neutral, as Ms. Kristen is always talking about. The situation is neutral, the circumstance is neutral. And I do mean this for anything. It's hard to believe,
Mhm.
but I've been in there in that situation when it didn't feel neutral, but here it was, I was eating something to keep me biologically from going crazy at that point. So deciding in advance is about telling your brain, you're not going in the future, and it's not looking in the past. You're saying, I'm deciding right before or in this moment that I'm going to react or respond in this way,
Mhm.
and my brain will feel safe. Because
Right.
you get to, like Ms. Kristen's always talking about, you get to talk to your subconscious in that third person, because it will listen to you. And when you decide in advance, I don't care if Joe right next to me in the cubicle is talking too loud on the phone and I'm trying to concentrate. I am going to decide in advance to not get irritated, and I'm going to keep working, but maybe I'm going to step away and maybe go to the restroom just to calm myself. So you're deciding in advance. You're telling your brain, I'm not in mortal danger. I am okay, and maybe I am going to step away, but I'm going to maybe get in some breath work while I'm in the restroom, right? So when you consistently decide in advance, your brain then starts to understand, oh, she's not in mortal danger. Okay, so we'll just let her go ahead. And your anxiety doesn't have a chance then to creep up.
Mhm.
So when you decide in advance, you're using your prefrontal cortex,
Mhm.
which is our logic.
Mhm.
And that's then going to settle down the subconscious, which then tells our anxiety, oh, wait, I'm not in danger. Okay, go ahead, do whatever you're going to do, because you're taking responsibility. And that's a big way to calm anxiety. And even about food, I love it when you have your 5-minute rule. I think it is the 5-minute rule.
Mhm. Mhm.
When you decide if you're going to eat something, and maybe it's during possibly a snack that you really don't want, then sit down and say, okay, for 5 minutes, what am I going to do? Well, you're deciding in advance, I'm going to sit here, calm down, and then we'll see if I logically am ready for that snack. And most
Right.
of the time, you're not.
You're not. Right.
So there you go.
So it's that whole idea of kind of giving your brain direction and giving your brain, like telling your brain, and I like the way you phrased it, that your brain then calms down, it knows that it's safe, and so it doesn't keep thinking those thoughts. It's one of the things that most people will say, and I actually will ask those of you who are in the if you are a person who you're either in the membership or you're really actively following and following my program, the idea of people have always said when they plan their meals ahead of time, most yeah, and I don't, this is not a diet, but most programs will ask you to track your meals, and that's after the fact. And I ask you to track before, I ask you to plan before, and it's exactly for what Kathy's saying, because when you plan ahead of time, then you don't have to think about food, because most people are talking about how they are obsessed with food. And why do I think about food all the time? Well, when you plan your food, it's already been made. The decision's been made. You don't have to think about it anymore. It's done. So that's what it goes. Your brain feels safe. It doesn't have to keep thinking about what am I going to eat today? What am I going to eat today? So now it already knows, and the plan is in place, and then we go from there. So that's and that's why, and the ladies who are in the membership know that's the one thing I'll ask. If somebody says something like, "Oh, I'm not losing any weight," and the first thing I'll ask is, "Are you doing your planner?" And that's the first question I ask, is because I know if you're doing the planner, you're going to at least have a foothold up on making sure that you're taking that anxiety out of the whole food issue and going from there.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else you want to add in regards to that?
I was going to say, give a bit, or maybe a more applicable example is, let's say you're going to a holiday party. Well, if you decide in advance, guess what, brain? What we're going to do is when we get to the party, we're going to go get a sample of one each of whatever is in the food supply. And guess what? That one plate is going to last me the whole evening. And I'm going to be satisfied and not deprived.
Right.
Bam. You've decided in advance that party is going to be fun, and you're going to eat whatever the heck you want.
And I will have to say, I have done that, not in relationship to food, but just in relationship to, I have a certain degree of social anxiety when it comes to, like, I get very uncomfortable in social situations. I'm a total introvert, y'all. And so I'm very uncomfortable when unless I know everybody, I'm not that comfortable. And so I started doing that, where if I was going to a party and I knew I didn't know everybody and I wanted to go, and it was really something that I wanted to do because I want to try and get over this, is I would have a conversation with myself beforehand and be like, and we're going to have a good time, and we're going to talk to people, and we're going to be friendly, and we're going to smile. We're not going to scowl at people. And, but I would tell myself that it was going to be fun. And 9 times out of 10, almost always, that's how it ended up, because I ended up feeling, because I told my brain calmed down, and then everything was fine. And the party would proceed, and I would have a really enjoyable time. But if I hadn't done that, I would have been just, my brain would have been spinning. So on the same lines of that, what will help a person's brain stay safe?
Absolutely. And you actually hit on it. And I love it that you did that, because it breathes perfectly into this. So your brain, right? We all know this, or at least if you don't, this will be new to you. But our brain, that's how the computers of the world came about. Our brain works on 1 or 0. It's on or off, right? And so it wants simplicity. Our brains soak up 20% of all of our energy in a given day. That's a lot of freaking energy. It wants the glucose to keep us alive.
Glucose,
thinking about.
That would be carbs, y'all. Those of you who are you're not eating carbs, I'm telling you, 120 grams of carbs a day is what your brain uses. It needs carbs. So yeah, don't be going without carbs.
And I am attesting to that. So your brain, it's so efficient, but it needs a lot of glucose, but it likes the idea of going from point A to point B as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Unfortunately, that is what causes our rumination sometimes, right? Because you have a thought, and then it starts to play over and over again. And what is your subconscious going to do? Oh, she keeps thinking about this. She keeps thinking about that piece of pie. So what am I going to do? I'm going to keep playing with that because it's efficient. Well, when you want to stop the ruminating, or when you want to lower your anxiety, you get to keep your brain safe. And your brain will feel safe when it has the quickest way to do something, going from point A to point B, right? So I love these, I guess you call them mantras. One of them is simple is greater than more. So the carrot, simple is greater than more, or the idea of less is equal to more, or greater than more. And what I mean by that is that our brains, again, they're keeping us alive. And so it wants the most efficient way to do that. And so what it wants is a path. If you give it a path, it's going to do anything it can to stay on that path to get to point A, or from point A to point B. So what do you think that means when you're deciding in advance? And Kristen already alluded to it. You decide in advance, and then you plan. No one likes to plan. And it's like, I want to be spontaneous. I want to, I want to be impulsive. Hey, that's okay. if it's something you really think is going to be enjoyable. But on a day-to-day basis, your brain, it does not like surprises. It does not want spontaneity. It wants the boring consistency going from A to point B the most efficient way. And so when you plan, i.e. in particular, when you're planning your meals for the day, guess what that's doing to your brain? It feels safe. It no longer has to think about, what am I eating? What am I eating? What am I eating? No, it says, okay, she says she's going to eat that. Well, guess what? Now I'm going to have more energy so I can be more efficient, more focused at work, or I'm going to have more energy for my kids or my grandkids. I'm going to have more energy ultimately because I'm not worried about taking all of this glucose and trying to figure out what the heck I'm going to do for each meal. No, it says right there, I'm eating this, this, and this. Okay, she's going to do that, and then I'm going to go have fun. Your brain is efficient, wickedly, wickedly efficient. And when you work towards making it more simple for yourself, that's when the magic happens, because your brain will start to like it and it starts getting dopamine and it says, oh yeah, I want more of this. And it becomes easier and easier every day to calm your brain, calm your anxiety, but have this efficiency built in simply by just planning your meals.
Yeah. Yeah. And following through on it. And and following through and actually doing what you say you're going to do. Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think we're at the good part here. I'm sorry, y'all, I can't read right now. What are some hands-on movement types of things, hands-on ways to neutralize anxiety?
Well, I have plenty of those stored up in my toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to give you, so you had said that if you wanted me to, I'm happy to do at least one breath exercise.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 3, and for the most part, you can kind of say they're free, meaning like it would not cost you anything to perform these to lower anxiety, but also to help you again in a scenario where maybe you are thinking about food and you really should not be, or rather it's starting to cause your anxiety to rise. These can actually stop that in its tracks. So it's breath work, which most of us would recognize as either meditation or possibly as simple as just what we call breathing patterns or pattern breathing. Mm-hmm. Then we want to also get in enough sleep. And I can talk about that after a little demo. Mm-hmm. But it's also organizing. Did you believe that? Yeah, mm-hmm. Totally. So breath work. This is interesting. I found out, and I kind of knew some of this, but it came about after I went through the 7-day sleep better challenge through Hay House, which is a publishing company. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. So on a physical level, our brain turns on the parasympathetic nervous system. I'm sorry, not parenthetic, sympathetic nervous system, mm-hmm. meaning the alert. Mm-hmm. The alert system goes on when our breath is 10 breaths or higher per minute.
So the faster we're breathing, your sympathetic nervous system comes on. Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is that average of how we breathe per minute has gone up every single year since the Industrial Revolution. So if our breath, starting at 10 breaths per minute and up, signals our sympathetic system to start up, the fact that we are now averaging 15 to 20 breaths per minute will explain exactly why your anxiety is always up and why we're in low-grade chronic anxiety, which is not good. Mm-hmm, so the best thing you can do for yourself to calm any anxiety, whether that's about food or about a situation, whatever it is to get into some breath work. And so the easiest one, we perform this actually in yoga a lot. We use ujjayi breathing, but we don't have to go into the ujjayi part. So it's called box breathing. Okay. And it's called box breathing because you're kind of making an imaginary box in your head when you're going for it. So what it is, and I'll explain it, we'll just go through it once. But box breathing is simple. So you count, and for in this case, 4 counts. You're going to inhale for 4. Then you're going to hold it. It's called retention. You're going to hold it. Okay, so you count for 4, inhale, hold it for 4. Then you're going to exhale for 4 counts, I should say. And then you hold it again and you hold it, retention. So you make a box pretty much in your head. So we can try it now. So if you're driving, don't close your eyes. But if you are somewhere where you can be calm, have your feet on the floor, please. It doesn't matter if you're standing or sitting. Have your hands either, by your side or on your thighs, and then go ahead and close your eyes, and I'll just go through it once. So go ahead, exhale. Oh, and I'm sorry, you do want to breathe through your nose if you can. This will help the pattern, but you can always keep your mouth open if you want. So here we go. You're going to exhale all the air out. And now we're going to inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold it. Wait, did I do that right? 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold it. 4, 3, 2, 1, and go ahead and let it go. Back to your regular breathing, and then go ahead and open your eyes if you did. I'm sorry if I didn't make that right. Sometimes it gets confusing, but it's basically inhale for 4, then you hold it for 4, then you exhale for 4, and then you hold it for 4, and then you would just repeat it.
I find the holding so much harder, like inhale and hold it. That's not bad across. Then when you exhale all of it out, I find it really hard to hold it in exhale with empty lungs back to where you then inhale. But it is absolutely, and it's also something, if your child, if anyone has kids that like have night terrors, or they have bad dreams, or they get themselves, like they get upset, like something happens and they start crying and they just can't, like the kids are going, they start doing that whole thing. This is a breathing, that box breathing is what you can use for anyone, adults or kids, and just have them, take 4 slow, deep breaths in, 4 across, 4 down, and then hold it for 4. And it'll absolutely calm everybody, calm them down, calm you down. It's just really, it's very effective. So that's awesome. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to throw? I would love for you to talk about environment, because I've been talking to people actually today in particular. I've talked a couple times about environment and how much cluttered environment can be cluttered mind. And so those two things kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And before I go back, just real quick, the box breathing, you can usually just go 4 up, inhale, and 4 down, exhale. You don't have to hold it. You don't have the retention there. So that's even easier to make it easier for people.
Or you can just hold it, or you can just hold for 2 counts. I've done it where it's up 4, hold 2, down 4, hold 2.
Oh yeah. There's so many different ways. Yeah. It's incredible. Breathing, people, it matters.
It matters.
So,
yeah.
So breathing, again, can help, and it's free, hopefully, right? For the most part, we're not necessarily paying per se for air. And then I had said prioritizing your sleep. That's majorly important, because the breathing throughout the day is going to help you sleep better. And in particular, between that, you want to be in bed, if you can, between the hours of 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., because that's when our brain is basically cleaning out everything, so that you have more clarity, that you have better focus, throughout the day, the next day. And then, so organizing, so there is definitely, and it's scientifically proven that, so most people would consider organizing not very important, a rather mundane and unnecessary thing, or mode, so to speak, or state of mind. But again, I told you, simple is greater than more, right? Our brains want simple, and our brain is wicked. It knows, because if you have the ability to see, your peripheral vision right now, look straight, but then tell me what you can see. You're not moving your head, but yet you see it on either side of you, hopefully, other stuff. My room is very organized, and so nothing is moving, nothing is out of place. My brain feels safe. It knows that nothing is out here to hurt me. When you have disorganization, and this can be on any level, it doesn't have to be someone who's a hoarder, It could be something that maybe, you had relatives over for the holidays, and, it's not the cleanest after that, right? So things are just misstrewn, things not where they're supposed to be. Your brain picks up on that. And so that peripheral, which usually can stay nice and calm, and says, oh yeah, everything's fine. All of a sudden, it has all these little things to think about. It's just, why is that there? Why is that there? If you are on a Zoom right now and you're trying to concentrate, let's say, and all of a sudden you notice outside on your peripheral that something is not where it's supposed to be, you've just lost your concentration. So your brain goes on alert, i.e. your anxiety is going to go up. So being organized isn't just a matter of being nitpicky, because it's not. Being organized tells your brain, again, I am safe. And even more so, when you're organized, you're probably, hopefully, using less of what you really don't require. Meaning, like, we all found out the hard way 2 years ago what we really truly require to make us happy and safe in our homes, right? And that same concept actually is what keeps you feeling safe. When you, and I'm not saying you have to be a minimalist, but what I'm saying is, when you are able to be organized enough that your brain knows where things are, it will then save energy. And it'll say, oh, okay, I know where that pair of scissors is because she's running late, but yet she knows she has to cut this piece of paper up to get back to where she's, whatever the case is. When your brain has order, it's going from A to B as efficiently as possible, and it loves that. It will keep giving you more dopamine because it knows what to do. And there is no unsafe situation to it. So organizing on its, it might sound mundane, but on a higher level, it's keeping your brain safe. It tells your brain everything's okay.
Right. So the like, kind of using, I know that, using like, whether it's Marie Kondo or whether it's, whatever it is, if you're using, if you're doing your little rolls, your little rolled up t-shirts and putting them in your dresser. It's just having there be organization. So again, your brain knows where everything is and it just calms down. I know for me, I notice it all the time when there's not a lot of clutter and the house is organized. I think Jackson's calmer, I'm calmer. It's just we both function very, very differently than when things just feel very chaotic. And I didn't realize it was because my brain needed to feel safe. That's really interesting. So
yeah.
What would you recommend if somebody, because I know that you've done this before, I know you've done this with people, what would you recommend as like a first step? Because sometimes for people who aren't organized, like I've seen some of the comments, people are like, I'm not organized, and it's just so overwhelming, and that creates more anxiety. So what would you say would be like the first step for somebody who knows they have some organizational issues, but they're almost more like, I don't even want to like to dip my toe in because it's gonna blow me away?
Absolutely. Obviously I'm biased and I think like the KonMari system is the best in the world, but I have trained in other types of organizing. So again, any type of organizing is going to benefit your brain and your health ultimately. So it doesn't matter which, but if I were to give one tip, it comes from the KonMari method actually. So the whole concept of the KonMari method, basically it's a gratitude practice, which you all are very familiar with.
Right.
And in its simplest form, the joy check, right, is what constitutes if I'm going to keep something. What I'm getting at is, even if you don't follow all the rules attached to the KonMari method, if you can get your head wrapped around the fact that, again, simple is greater than more or less is equal to more, then if you can at least decide on a daily basis when you're using something, and it doesn't matter what it is, what I'm getting at is when you can start using gratitude and say, okay, this item, this light that I'm using right now, I'm going to give it gratitude. Sounds funny, but I'm going to thank it. And then I'm going to ask myself, oh, do I need this? Like, start asking yourself, one, give something gratitude, which is odd to us in the Western world, but ask yourself one, or give something thanks, give gratitude, and then ask yourself, is this something I require? If you can say honestly, yes, I require it or I love it, okay, great. But if you go and let's say, you're in your laundry room and you see an old piece of clothing that you haven't used for years, but it's been on the floor for 10 months, ask yourself, I give it grace, right? I want to thank it, but do I need it? There's a lot of guilt attached to our possessions. And what the gratitude does automatically, and you've said this recently, that we can't experience gratitude and guilt at the same time.
Right.
Our brains don't work that way.
Yeah. And we can't do gratitude and sadness or gratitude and depression or any of those things. Yeah.
So the more you experience gratitude on the daily, and that can be, if you're a prayer person, then you're praying all the time. That's a lot of gratitude. You can even be meditating all the time. But what I'm getting at is when you experience gratitude on the daily, not only does your brain give you really cool endorphins, okay, but then the guilt stays away and you can decide more rationally, not only about if I'm going to keep this, but just on a daily basis, your decisions. You're deciding in advance, but you're also making better decisions because they're not based on fear. It's based on what's best for you.
Cool. I love that. That is so awesome. So we definitely have some questions over in the comments. So let me move over there, and I want to make sure I don't cover all of them. See if I can read them. All right. So how can one, this is a great question. Lori asked this question. How can one be totally organized and still have anxiety?
So it is possible, like I'm not going to say that I never have anxiety anymore. Again, anxiety, and I will qualify this. We are built to have anxiety. We should not be ashamed or fear anxiety. Anxiety is part of our fight or flight system. It's what keeps us alive. So instead of, what I would ask is to have her reframe it and think about, okay, I have anxiety, even though I'm organized. How can I better, and I don't want to say the word accept, but the organization is one part of stabilizing your anxiety. But now that your personal space is organized, that's going to help a great deal. But now you get to decide, how am I now, what is else? In other words, you get to do the deeper work is what it comes down to. Because organizing can only get you so far. It's going to help you feel safe on a personal, your personal space, but there's still triggers that you need to dig deeper on. And so the question really should be, what else has triggered me? Because now everything is nice and organized. I get to work with Kristen and get some deeper thoughts in there, because organizing is wonderful and it's going to help your brain save glucose, but that's not always going to help you feel safe. It's maybe those other tips I gave you, the breathing, say, and the sleeping. So that kind of deal. Hope I answered a little.
Yeah, no, that was great. That makes a lot of sense, that those two things, that it's not like it's not that automatically you're organized, you won't have anxiety. Cause I know that you are incredibly organized, but yet you still do your practice of making sure that you're taking care of yourself with your anxiety. Okay. So then how do you help yourself when your anxiety, when you're anxious about forgetting things all the time? How do you if you are a person who's forgetful, how do you kind of calm your anxiety about that?
So that has two different levels, not knowing necessarily what level that person is referring to, because obviously, we have multiple steps, right, of memory loss. But when it comes to having apprehension about that, the best you can do is decide in advance that if I forget something, it's not the end of the world, right? Pre-planning has so much to do with our brain feeling safe. So the more we plan, I know it sounds really mundane, but when you plan anything, whether that's your day, whether that's your meal, you're putting your brain at ease. That automatically keeps your anxiety down. So if you are scared, let's say, or just very apprehensive about forgetting, then get very, very, very familiar with some type of calendaring system. And it can be electronic, it can be paper. I actually use both, believe it or not. But be willing to delegate your memory out. Your memory is not meant to keep every single piece of information. And I know that there's a quantity on average, right? It's enormous. So we should not expect ourselves to remember every single thing. And so the best we can do is help ourselves. delegate out that memory through some type of calendar. And again, understand that you're human.
Right.
You're not going to remember everything. Mistakes happen, but that doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means you're human.
Right. So it sounds like, and I want to make sure that I clarify this for myself. It sounds like you're telling like part of the deciding in advance is I'm going to decide in advance that I'm not going to get upset if I forget something. So
Yep.
and then that calms your brain down because it's like, okay, well, yeah, we forgot, but we already said we weren't going to get upset about that. So that's not anything to get ourselves all worked up about.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly what it is.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's move on. Okay. Let's see. Relate. These comments. This is awesome. I'm so glad you guys are relating to these comments. Yes, Liz Ryan, Cathy Perez is awesome. You are right. Oh, Deborah says sticky notes are my best friend. And
That's a good one. I like that one.
I'm sure that that's possibly something. Yeah, notes. Yeah, absolutely. So using sticky notes and kind of having those reminders and those things to kind of calm down. What about being OCD? What about being OCD about relationships? I'm not sure what your how do you want to, Liz, are you asking how that relates? How does OCD relate to relationships, or how does it relate to all this? If you can just clarify your question. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. I'm dealing with causing constant okay. So again, you're thinking like the rumination in regards to a relationship. You're ruminating and repeating those thoughts. So,
Right.
Cathy, what would you say about that?
So that's definitely, believe it or not, organizing can help in the respect that, again, when your personal space is in order, that puts you in a little bit better order, right? On a chemical level, believe it or not, but also, on a mental level. When you're feeling high anxiety about, say, like a relationship, my best experience has been, believe it or not, realizing that, and I don't know if you've ever read Lisa Nichols, her book, oh shoot, I forget the name of it. Anyway, it's a wonderful book, but she talks about different types of relationships, okay? And be understanding to yourself that some relationships, even if they're long-term, are meant to end. Then you have lifelong relationships. Then you have one-time relationships where you learn something from them, but it's a moment in time, like literally a moment. So your brain gets to understand that no one relationship is going to make or break you. Every relationship matters. And when your brain, I'm OCD. I have a lot of OCD family members. So I know what that means. I mean, I know what that feels like. But when you are able to tell your brain, okay, look, every relationship matters, and I get to honor all of them, regardless of how they turned out. But they're made to end at some point. Even the lifelong ones will end, obviously, when one or the other person moves on upwards, right? So the only kind of tip I can give is to tell your brain, relationships are what make you. You wouldn't be who you are without the relationship. So you get to be okay, is what I'm saying, with how your relationship was, is, or like you can't predict, right? Who's going to come into your life, but you can respond to any relationship with gratitude. Again, gratitude is huge. And you're taught, in this group and with Kristen, you are taught how important gratitude is. It is enormous. It's literally, in my view, actually, based on all the different books I've read, gratitude is actually even more powerful than love. It's a form of love, right? People think about love as the most powerful in the world, in the universe, but gratitude actually kind of takes over because it has that natural pull. Gratitude will get you out of a situation by responding versus reacting. Yeah. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I think it's always, and again, it's deciding, you kind of in that case, you're deciding in advance, I know how I'm going to think about this. When those thoughts come in about that person that's no longer with me, I'm gonna have this plan that like I've decided in advance that this was the nature of this relationship. This is the direction it went in, and I'm going to be okay with that. And so it's
Yeah.
again, it's calming your brain down and telling it that that's what you're going to do.
Good
All right,
question.
we got two. That was a great question. All right, and so Becky says, how do I help my husband with anxiety? He likes a clean house. And if our dog has an accident in the house, he gets triggered because it reminds him of his childhood and he has to deal with the dog's accident and he should, okay. Okay, so it kind of triggers him when he has to clean up, and it kind of makes the situation worse. So how could Becky help her husband kind of bring his anxiety down?
So that definitely is, based on obviously his past, right?
Mhm.
And so he's got work to do. But if she wanted to help in some way, then she could ask him, and this sounds funny, but she could ask him, if this happens again, how would you rather respond? How would you like it to happen? Rather, how would you like to respond? Meaning you're actually asking him, instead of reacting, how would you want to respond to make this easier? Because it's going to happen again, unfortunately, right? I mean, they just do what they do.
Yeah.
So when you put your brain on alert that this is going to happen again, and I'm deciding in advance, and hear it again, you're going to decide in advance, when this happens, I'm not going to get triggered. I am going to act this way, meaning, you're telling yourself over and over again, this isn't a one and done, just as Ms. Kristen's always talking about.
Mhm.
It's not ever one and done. When you're dealing with high anxiety, you get to tell yourself over and over again, just like you were ruminating about something, that you are safe. The more you tell yourself that you're safe, again, deciding in advance, there's nothing wrong here. I get to respond, which isn't easy, right? But I get to respond to this situation. Again, the breath work, the sleep, all of those habits accumulate on one another, right? They stack up and they make it easier to respond. Your main quest in life when you have anxiety is to learn to respond instead of react. And that's where deciding comes in. That's where planning comes in. So I hope that helps a little.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, yeah, we could go on forever. I just looked at see what time it was. So we, as an added bonus, Cathy has agreed to come into the membership group, and she's going to spend, some time in the membership group next, because we have a call tonight. So she's going to come in and chat with the members in the membership group and be able to give some really specific coaching in regards to these things. But Cathy, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your like I say, your expertise, your time, how much the things that we both do are so intertwined.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder we're friends. So that makes sense now. Not that I didn't know it before, but thank you so much. I know that I think that those people who are asking questions, thank you so much for your questions. And please know that we have someone in the group. You see Cathy in the group all the time. If you have a question for her, just ask her a question. If you you become friends with her, and then you can send her a message on Messenger. You can ask her a question if you have something like that. Like I said, she has a wealth of knowledge in this area, and has really, really great practical tips and strategies that you can use that will really, help bring things down. So Cathy, what is one closing thing that you'd like everybody to know about anxiety?
That it's not going anywhere, but on the positive side, you are in control, and you get to understand that something as simple as gratitude can help you regulate your anxiety to a better base neutral. It really is that simple. It's not easy, but it is simple. You claim more gratitude for yourself, and you will lower your anxiety.
Ooh, so good. So good. All right. Thank you so much, Cathy, for your time. And like I say, your expertise, I really appreciate it. Y'all, you might have to listen to this one a second time because this is so good. So I hope you all of you out in podcast land, I hope you got so much out of this. Hopefully you all, I know you all who listened in the podcast, in the group, got a lot out of it. And again, our membership group, we will be spending another, bit of time with Cathy as well. And you can get all of your questions answered. So make sure you come with any of your questions, and we'll go from there. It's one of the added benefits of being in the membership. So again, thank you so much for being here, for joining us. And again, Cathy, I can't thank you enough. And y'all, we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful, stress-free and relaxed time. Remember that breathing. All right. Have a good night, y'all. Bye.